How how is the
It's see, I
Netherlands?
have this nice color, you know, so it's not the lab color.
A lot of time in the sun. Well, I'm excited to see the lab today.
Yeah, I just sit in. I hope the noise is not too much because machines are still running.
No, you're fine. Probably a lot more noise where I'm at. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think we're good to go.
and still blue. So it's always you're so blue.
See what
Yeah,
you mean.
like last time when we talk about the blue light. Yeah, actually, I will, if you like, I can change the cam a bit. So we just look on
Perfect.
one of our ICPs running, actually. So it's summertime. From we have four ICP OS here um, in this room. This is our ICP room, what we call them. So that we have two ICP Spectre Green. That's some specific one. I can explain a bit later, a bit more about why we choose them. So
Hmm.
we have two of them. Then we have an ICP Blue, which is so the typical used by other companies. This one, which it calls Blue. That's the old model name, and Green is the new model. So that's a development which is a bit longer on the market. And so actually, it's summertime. Usually at this time in winter, all the four machines are running now, running too, and they work. I think they will work another hour, 2 hours. So, and when the holiday season is gone, then usually they work till midnight, 1, 2 a.m. So the lab is working between 6 in the morning till mostly 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. So,
Jeez.
and then here is the next ICP. That's an Agilent ICP. It's from another company, which have some advantages and some disadvantages, like always. And then you see here, the next what you can see here is then the ICP MS. So this is the typical mass spectrometry, what we have here. It's also one of the newest models, and especially also doing the changes and some specific parts which we're running here for seawater testing. So it's one of these MS who can do that. So, and this is our ICP room. So actually you see here are type of samples running, and that's maybe sometimes explaining why we have no idea about whose lab it is. Here in Europe, we have very strict data protection rules, and so every sample here is only valid by the barcode. So if you don't register the barcode, we have no idea who's sending us the data, and the lab staff have also no idea which sample it is. So that's why if we talk about the ICPs, I have to ask you please to send me your report back, because this is the last turn today, and I have no idea which test it is. And at the same, you can see here, it's going up into these. We use that blue machine for reverse osmotic samples, and there you see that's also the last turn today, and you see it on the red color of the barcodes. So that's why we have the red tabs and the red barcode. So we know from beginning on that this sample's going automatically in this type of machine. So and
Right. And
exactly,
that's the one that has the induction coil um, that's situated horizontally versus vertically because
yeah,
it's either
exactly.
radial or axial. Yeah, because this one's doing purified water, so we don't have to worry about it dirtying up as much with
Yeah, I
where
can
we have to
show.
use the
Yeah, I
yeah.
can show you here one of these major difference where we what we talk about in training, which you see in video, but so here also. Now, when we go here in, you see here the blue. This is the plasma,
Hmm.
and the plasma is a ultra. It's an ultra hot gas, which will be activated to radio frequency. So, and due to that, it becomes super hot, and we push a lot of gas through, and the same amount we push also the reverse osmotic water in. And now you see it's creating a blue flame, yeah. So, which is here in the middle. So we call that flame. It's the wrong wording. It's a plasma, but I think for understanding a flame makes it more easy to understand. So, and now you see that the flame is touching a metal part here. We try to get it on the cam. A second here. Maybe I
Yep.
can get it. So, and it
And
touches.
is
So,
that
and
the
this,
transfer lens?
yeah, here you can see it here. So, And this metal part, this calls OP. This is a protection plate for the cam. And behind that plate, these are for cooling. So this metal block, which you see then after, that's for cooling the machine. So, and if you test salt now, and you press salt here in, then you have the problem that the salt will be blocking up through this plate and will be floating around in this chamber and creating a problem with tests. So the first 20 tests are quite good. Then you can say the machine is a little bit better in some specific trace elements, but after this 20, it becomes more worse. So, and so we also start with that machine, and we also worked out methods how to work there. So I have 8 people here in this lab, and all of them have PhDs in organic chemistry and biology and whatever. I have all the studies guys here. And but very early, we find out that there's a better way to do it when we talk about seawater, because these machines, they developed them 15 years ago around, and they are not made for seawater. So that's why we use them today only for reverse osmotic water. So which is also important for us, because we have a machine for reverse osmotic, we have machines for seawater, like this one, which are especially made for seawater. And we have a specific machine there, which we can use for both. We can use that for seawater, these Agilent, and for freshwater as a machine which, when something went wrong or when we want to have a retesting, so we have another machine with another method, and then we know if the parameter was okay or not. So that's why we use it for very dirty samples. For we had sometimes, you know, when you have, as example, when you have skimmer caps, and I want to know what is in the skimmer, then we use that machine. So, but we have all the methods on this machine for seawater. So, and for reverse osmotic water, so if something is broke and we have not enough machines, we can activate it without need or without having the issue that we use a machine which is made for freshwater testing or for reverse osmotic testing. So this is the parts, these technical parts, they are all made for freshwater and for reverse osmotic. So you can use them for seawater, but then the results are not good. This one here, this is made for seawater testing. And what you see the difference now is that we have a standing flame. And if you go here into, you see that all the dust and the burning and the salt is going up here on top and will be go there out of the air. So the salt will not touching any parts in the chamber and will not retest it. And at the other time, we have 2 cam systems here. You see it in the glass. You can see here and here. These 2 glass balls here. So we have a double-side optical interface. That means we have from 2 side cameras are looking into the flame. And just you see that just it started a new sample. And this orange color, this is the sodium, what you can see.
Yeah.
So, and if we go to the other machine, which is not running, I can open it. So they need to clean now. So that's running the whole day now. Here you can see, this is the RF unit. And these are the optical interfaces going into the flame. And here you see the hole where all the heat and all the dust and dirt going here in. So it's a very strong wind. And this dirt, when you go, so it was not cleaned. It ran the whole day, and you see the fingers.
Yeah.
Super clean.
So having the plasma orientated that way, where everything that's burned up is immediately exiting the chamber, is really crucial to prevent contamination in between samples.
It is also a development which is way longer made, because the company is building up then the machines for these applications, which was not planned before. You know, when we started ICP for the seawater, nobody is planning that we will use that much amount of samples with saltwater. So a standard university, they will not do 200, 300, 400 samples a day. They're doing 1, 2, 3, 5, then they clean, then they calibrate, and they do it again, then they clean, they calibrate, they do it again. So that's why a sample costs you later than a few $100. So what we're doing is crazy, and it's not normal. So to have 3 shots within of a few minutes, and then 300 times on different people, and it's also a situation. What you need is you need to organize it. So it's not only that you have the machines there, so you have to organize it, the amount of samples. So maybe I can show you that. So these are the samples from, these are the samples from today. So which are made, all of them.
Jeez.
So
Wow.
they're sitting here. I know it's not from, I'm sorry, it's from yesterday and today. So it's 2 days. I'm sorry. One too much. It's 2 days samples, which we had to make. So that's the point, is that when somebody sends a sample in, let me say you send me a sample from your best SBS tank. So, and somebody decides to send me a sample from his fish tank, which is 20 years old and has more phosphate than salt in the water. So
Yeah.
what will happen? When I put now the sample with the super high phosphate in front of yours, it is possible that it has an effect on your sample then later. To provide this, we check the samples before and we do them in a time range. So that means I know if you activate your sample, I know that this is the tank from SBS, and the system now sees, oh, this is a low nutrient system. And then the system here gives an automatical number in one of these. We have there some specific trays, and their specific trays in which collect your samples then to the right time. So that means that when we have 20, 30 samples with high phosphate, then we do them later. So we start in the early morning with low phosphate and going up over the day with high phosphate, so that every sample is in the same range coming in, so that we have no effect on other tests. After every test, which you can see now here, every test gets a specific cleaning. So every test is made 3 times. And if you look here now, the needle now, it starts now to clean all the parts. So this will doing by every test automatically. So it was 3 times tested, and every detection and every analysis will be then checked against 3 different standards. So the one is seawater, the other one is the standard what we produce, and the third one is the standard what we buy from another company. And our software, which is behind, that's the more important thing at all, is that we run these machines till 4 p.m., 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Then they will be cleaned, complete new calibrated, and then make them ready for the night shift. Then the deep cleaning means cleaning of the reactant chamber, of everything is then done in the morning. So we have 2 times calibration a day usually. And then the software, immediately after test is made, they check about responsibility, about plausibility. So is it possible that this is your sample? So did it match with samples which we have before? Did it match with the average amounts of samples, the average amount of levels what we get, and the average percentage difference to the standards? So, and if that happens and the system say it's okay, then this value will go into the computers and will say as okay. So that's why your the samples what you're testing, they have these internal AI-based plausibility checks. There are several other checks then, but from the type of the machines, this ICP is using especially every ICP for his own circumstances, and that you cannot do if you have only one. So
Right.
you need
So it's checking for anomalies between like a certain customer sample. Let's say you have a customer that's sending in these samples on a weekly basis, and all his levels are, let's just say hypothetically, they're perfect. And then all of a sudden he sends in this week's sample and he reads a potassium level of 600 milligrams per liter, which is way out of the norm. It kind of throws up a red flag. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Then usually the second tube comes to the work. So if that happens, then we will get, give me a second, I will go to another room. Then it goes to the other place. You can see it here. I cannot show too far because we have customer data here on it. But here you see then the computers running. So usually we have here 3 computers. That's 3 people sitting here. We have a fourth one, which is in home office. And they checking all day long the live data from the machines. So if something is not good, they get a different coloration. So like yellow, like red or blue, depending. And then the staff looking into the machine and checking if that is possible or not. So that after the AI check, we have the possibility to check by the people themselves. So, and then they can decide if the machine has to use the second vial. So we do an after test, or they decide, yes, it's okay, because every level seems okay. Because, you know, it is possible that you do a feeding before. We have this very often with iron. And if you feed brine shrimp, they can contain a lot of iron. So, and people say, I don't dose iron. I did not make any water change, but I have now a high iron content. So then somebody goes there and check it and say, okay, it's 1 or 2 micrograms more. So, and this is in the range which is usual or which can be okay. If we find 1,000 micrograms, then something went maybe wrong. Then we have to check these also. But this happens in every test, so that you don't have the situation that everything runs on one machine. And if you run only on one machine in one lab, you have the problem that you have these, that you don't know which test coming in, how you can sort it out. And then you cannot run different type of machines. You can say, in these machines, I run all the high phosphate, high nitrate levels. In this machine, I run all the low levels. And this machine is quite good for this and whatever. So, and that's also the reason why so many labs are buying these Spectra Blue, because if you look on the papers of the company, this machine is the better machine. They say we have a higher sensitivity to trace elements. And they make a game about MS and higher sensitivity and a more accuracy. You can say if you follow the marketing papers of the companies. But what they don't tell you is that they don't write it for seawater. They write it for freshwater application, means you have a super nice clean water, then you add zinc on it, and then you check only in RO water or super pure water, you check zinc. Then the machine have a higher sensitivity than the other one. But our problem is that we are not on a, we drive not race cars. So we have super duty heavy pickups because we have a lot of dirt in the samples.
We're dealing with chemical soup.
Exactly. So, and one thing which described it for me perfectly is that if you're doing a freshwater testing or a pure water testing, then you search a needle in a haystack, which is super easy. Yeah, there's nothing, and then you search this metal, so you find fast. But with seawater, what we're doing, we have the problem that we search a sand grain in a sand dune. So we have way too much, and you can see actually here so good the difference. You see here the color,
Sodium,
and this orange, this is all sodium. That's also that's only what we see here. It's only the sodium chloride, and this creating a full orange light. And now the machine needs to find a little green dot, a little flash of red orange, a little flash of red orange, and this near same spectra of this orange. If you go to freshwater, so reverse osmotic water, look, it's blue. So, and that means the CAM section, they don't have any chips and any view for this spectra of the argon. So in fact, for the machine is dark. And if now comes a red flash, a little blue flash from the light, which will be sending out from the atoms and from the elements, sorry, then the machine it's easy to find, but not if you have all this shit in. And that is the big difference between seawater and freshwater testing. And That's also the way why we buy at the end. If you look on the papers, we buy the machine which is not the best one. So, but I'm a hunter in this case, so I need a pickup. I need a 500 horsepower pickup who can do the work with all the dirt. I don't need a Ferrari, so because I drive in the forest, you know what I mean. So
Yep.
it's crazy, and I don't care if I look on the trace elements and say I can do that 25 times more sensitive. So what is the sense that I find 5.3 or 5.1 zinc or 3.7, 3.8 zinc? This is nothing which changes anything. But what I need to know is, how is my potassium? How is my calcium? How is my iodine, my bromine? All this I need very exactly, because plus minus 10% is a huge thing, or 5% is a huge, if you look in magnesium or if you look in molybdenum or whatever. But it does not matter in zinc, 5% plus minus, it does not matter. So that's it. So that's why we focus more on these alkali metals, and we focus more that we can do 200 tests on the same average and on the same quality, as I have the problem that I have to clean the machine and do the calibration after 20 tests, which nobody did. So usually they use then a method to dilute the samples, that they don't need to do every hour, because 30 tests you can do in 90 minutes. So that means that every 90 minutes you have to clean and you have to recalibrate the machine, which costs you 1.5 hours. Nobody do that. So you can't tell me that. So, and that's also why
Otherwise, I said, otherwise the tests wouldn't be as cheap as they were if people had to clean and do that much. There's no way.
exactly, yeah. And the tests are super cheap. So if you do a normal testing in a standard laboratory, we pay for such amount of numbers, you have to pay about 450, between 250 and 400 bucks. You have to pay for less levels what we test here. So, and that's why we have to automate it. We have to look for these different ways, different methods, and also what we're doing a little bit different to all other labs is that we have our coral farm here. So we do since 12 years every day all the coral farming tests which we're running. So the test is not all, it's not theoretical here, and by AI the test is also every day with the coral farm. So the team who do the interpretation, like me, or people running there, they check every day the water levels in the lab. And if there is a mistake in the lab, then we go immediately down to the lab and say, hey, something gets wrong, and we can do the retesting. We can check it. And under these circumstances, we find a lot of mistakes, and we find a lot of necessary steps, what we have to do to have the right methods to deliver them to the customers the right levels.
Right. It's a lot of redundancy.
Water. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot
According
of
to aquarium water, and not, and I also do not care about a theoretical seawater, which has nothing to do what we keep in our tank. So I have to check what you have under the circumstances, what you do, and under the situation of all the shit and bacteria and cleaning and whatever you do when you work in your aquarium. So I have way more material, particles, and that stuff. And that's also the point why you have the filters that we can provide levels and trends so that you can work. And which you told last time that you see that the stability is there in the testing.
Yeah, absolutely is. And like I said, it took a lot of confidence building for me to start, dosing some of these trace elements based on the results I've been receiving on, some of these aquariums and systems, just because of the amount invested in and just the amount of living things that are in my care. So yeah, it took a lot of vetting, but after multiple tests and over really, it's been a few years now since we started using Fauna Marin tests, and yeah, it's been giving us great results, and they're results that I can trust, and it's just good to know that you have such redundancies behind all these tests, even if everything goes right for the first 20 tests and there's one anomaly, that you have that AI and the software to pick that up and realize that something's not right here. And on top of that, you have another layer of, you said you run those machines daily to test an actual coral farm, which, well, I operate a coral farm, so what better match, right?
Yeah, I have to look on the corals. So there we have a lot of things which are not scientifically proved. So, but when you talk, and I know you do that, you're really long in the business, and I know that you talk also with other farmers. So, and now
Yep.
somebody coming, freshly from the university, and say, but there's no proof that strontium has a relation or is important. But look, I can. The last 20 years, I talk with hundreds of coral farmers, and all of them, all, not one single say, "Oh no, it's not important." So this is the proof by itself. Possibly there's no study out who check this under circumstances in the aquarium. Yes, that's possible, but that means that's not existing. And today we have, unfortunately, more the situation that if it's not in a study, if it's not true. So, and I also take every study as the truth. And I work for universities and I build aquariums for them, and I see what they sometimes writing down to get their degree, and it has nothing to do with the true or what happens in real. So in real, is that what I told you? I go into your farm, I looked into it, and then I know if you know what you're doing or not. You can see that in 1 or 2 minutes. That's it. That's the proof at all. And all other is paperwork. The same with the test. The test is paperwork. It is possible, and we do mistakes. That's normal. People working, machines are working. It's complicated. That's why we need people like you and others who can do interpretation and can use a test. Same as you have if you have a doctor for your blood test. He looks at it and then he tells you what is to do, the necessary steps, not all steps. And this is a little bit losing in the last months, in my opinion, due to marketing things to say, yeah, we have MS, and people need to understand that MS is only a small part, even not that the tests are made only from ICP. So that we have several machines running. So if we look here to the other side, so this is the quiet lab now, you see also a bunch of different machines which we have running here. So all of them, every single of them costs more than an ICP test and is only value for 4 or 5 different tests. So these are our high-speed analyzers. And these analyzers.
Is that the SAK 254 test, or is
No,
this used for
this is in another room for SAK, which we're doing. But
Okay.
I show every machine there, but the other side I cannot in. They close it down. But SAK is a small machine. That's a photometric, so that's not very
Right.
interesting. But let us start here with the testing of alkalinity and pH and that thing. So or salinity. The most labs working in salinity with an ICP. That's why they have the big machine. And the big machine, the big blue one, which is a little bit bigger, it's not better in technology. It's the same technology. The only difference is that they can also detect chlorine, so chloride. And then they're doing a calculation based on natural seawater to get the salinity. So they don't test the salinity, they test chloride, which is 20 millions higher than a zinc level. So the machine has a really wide span, which they have to detect. So you can do that, but it's not very good and not very accurate. So that's why in some labs, when they say we have salinity 36, in real it's 35. But it's not wrong. So you cannot say they do a wrong method. The method is from 8050, so it's an old method. And they said, we know the salinity at the moment, we know how many chlorides are in natural seawater, which is true. You can do that on that way because natural seawater is all over the world same, according to the salinity. So, but we have aquarium water, and aquarium water can be different depending on the salts, depending on the trace elements, whatever you dose. And that's why we use correctly titrators, and there's only one brand in the world who can do that on 0.1, and that's VW. And this specific testing here, that's the reason why we need these big samples with 50 mils in the sample, because this machine needs big glasses which we have to fill. So, and then it's automatically tested in conductivity, and then we use the table which is from the UN, United Nations, which is according scientifically usually used by the most labs and the most universities, calculated then to the salinity. But it's not diluted, it's not made by refractometers, it's not made by chlorination, and it's made by testing like it should be. And at the same time, we have here pH testing and all the other things. And this is then in your sample. So you can see here, that was now, it was made for the freshwater guys. So that's why we have also freshwater ICPs. And that's why we need these big samples. And with ICP tests who don't have this type of waters, they can do only that on the ICP. Under the problems, then they can do that with that machine, but they have then the problem that they have all the salt in, and then they use it only the bigger version that they can detect chloride, so they spare the time and the work to do it with the titrators. So I'm sorry, let's see. So, and that's the reason why we use the titrators.
Interesting.
To have the right, to have it tested and undiluted tested. That's the most important thing.
So I'm curious, is how do you guys get your CO2 concentrations in the sample? Or how is that tested? Are you guys doing a calculation with pH and doing the titration by seeing how much carbon it's still? Is it just a reverse?
That's a calculation between the alkalinity level and the pH what we find. So, and then we calculate the time. So how long the stuff is on the way. And depending on the time, we know how we need to adjust the pH. So we do with about 13,000 samples, we do testing. Because actually we get around, now it's summertime, it's quite less. So we get around 350 tests nowadays around this number. And we doing a lot of tests some years. How was the pH before sending? And when we store them, so when we store them for 1 day, when we store them in 70, 73 degrees Fahrenheit, if we store them with 90 degrees, so then we see how the pH is reacting. And it was quite stable. It was way more, it has more stability as I ever thought. But this is also the reason why we use this filtration, so these filters. And every proper lab should use these filters. It's crazy not to use it because we have way too much particles. And these particles, and it's bacteria. And that's the point of the filters. The right filters, what we use is 0.02. They remove the bacteria, and that keeps the sample way more stable as it is without. So that's also a reason why you have the stability in your testings. Unfortunately, a good filters cost a lot of money. So they are not to get for a few cents. So a good filters cost around $1.50 each test and can be used only one time. And that's also sometimes the reason why maybe a test is $1 to a few dollars more than the other one. But on the other side, that's the same, you buy cheap beer, so it makes no sense. So it's better you buy a good one.
Yeah, because that's always something I've been really interested in, is especially seeing the difference between some of the CO2 concentrations of the systems here in the farm during the summer, where we can't open up our bay doors and let nice fresh air in like we only can about 3 months out of the year. And just the contrast to that is just, it's insane how big that difference is, and obviously its impact on pH. But yeah, I was always curious on how you guys get actual CO2 concentration of the water. I knew it was some type of calculation, reverse calculating pH and carbonate hardness and all that.
We have specific seawater pH detectors running into this. That's also the reason why they stand away from other machines, because the wall behind the machines has no electric wires. So you need to take care that's not much electricity around these type of machines of pH and things to have good results. So that's why this design here is made on that way.
So you got interference. Those things are so sensitive, they can actually just get interference from current running through shielded wire. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there's also another things what we're doing here. So you see that machines which we doing detecting here, which is doing the fluoride testing. So we also doing the fluoride testing. We do not use IC or HPLC, like which is standard used by everybody else, because you have to dilute the samples, and diluting samples in seawater is a big problem. Due to the pressure and unpressured assault, you get precipitations in the sample, and these precipitations making some issues. So that's why we use and we let us build machines. So this machine was the first ever in the market, which is built for seawater application. So it was not available before. It was only made for freshwater. And every single element, which you can here have his own detector, which with a 90 millimeters with UV, with laser detection. And so we can also detect PO4, NO3, NO3, NO2, etc. Fluorides we can detect with this machine simultaneously within 3 minutes and undiluted, which is unique on the market. So because the solution, sometimes you have to dilute it by factor 25 and more. And if you have a little mistake by 1% maybe, or 1%, 2%, and then you calculate it up to a liter of seawater, then you have huge mistakes. So that's why we stopped. We have some ICs here. We tried it out. It cost me a lot of money, but at the end I was unhappy with, and it causes a lot of problems in my farm. So I was really pissed, and I go to this company and ask them, would you be able to build it for us? Which we did, and it cost us some time also to find out when it was correct and which not. And now what we're doing is we're using that machines to detect orthophosphate. So that's what you detect at your farm, yeah, PO4. And now we do the same sample which you send us in. We check the orthophosphate, we take the total phosphate in the ICP. And now we compare those machines together on plausibility. And the difference between the two levels, they showed us how many polyphosphates we have and how many organic is in the water. So, and we do this testing since more than 15 years now. Before we had a lab, we have a testing of organics that's based on polyphosphates. So that's the same, like you say, I will check these, we can do the same with nitrate. So on one test, we take the nitrate. On the other machine, we test the total nitrogen. And the difference, then we can say, okay, the difference is ammonia and it's urea and some organic parts. And then you work with factors. And then we said, okay, usually in our terms, we have the phosphate as orthophosphate. This is what you have in a standard ICP. They said every phosphorus is automatically orthophosphate. But with an advanced lab and with a little bit more knowledge behind, you know that you have different types of phosphorus. So you can have the total phosphorus, which is everything. You can have the orthophosphate, which is direct active in our systems. But you also can have the polyphosphates, which is mainly organic bounded. And that is the depot effect. And that's the reason when you can detect and see why you have cyanobacteria, why you have these problems with the biofilm, why you have problems with the microbiome, in the things you can see on that numbers, and you can see it a long time before it really becomes worse. So that's why we can do a forecast.
And perhaps a 3-inch sand bed that hasn't been touched in 3 to 4 years, or old tank syndrome. So that can be correlated with the polyphosphate. So it's a step up from just doing the microwave trick to see the difference between inorganic and organic phosphates by measuring an unheated sample and then doing another sample that is brought up to, I believe, just under boiling, and then comparing the results to get the actual ratios between them.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I didn't know that we were able to do that.
That was also quite funny when we do that. I don't remember. I think it was 98, 97 about it. I worked for universities for sponge breeding. I built these aquariums, and O2 respiration chambers or whatever. The goal was to breeding sponges, so from the Mediterranean Sea to get some proteins and that stuff. So, and that's what was a huge and a large project. And I built all the things, and they hired me, and I said, creating foods, making things that we want to breed the sponges. So, and during that time, I had some access to the labs there and talking with the chemists there, and they showed me how we can do phosphorus testing also. And I developed then the test because I think I need a system how people can do it at home, because I don't have the machines here and they cannot work with the acids and that stuff. And I worked it out, and I write it down. It's okay. If we do that all, maybe we will get enough numbers to see if a factor is usable. So that was the sense before we did it. So, and at the beginning, it was a huge discussion. So it was the same like today, shitstorms and people, and this is not scientifically proved. And I always answer, what the heck is scientifically proved what we're doing? So it's too less. So, but over the time, we collect all this data, and after 5,000 tests and after 10,000 tests and the reports, we definitely see in the numbers that on around 87, 89%, I don't remember the exact numbers, of all the people who has a specific factor also at the same time cyanobacteria. And these numbers was proof enough to follow then these working into the lab. So using different type of machines like EMS, like talk testing, what we're doing here, organic testing, and HSA, and to compare the numbers each other and getting information about the differences of these testing each other. So one times to have a plausibility, if it could be correct or not. And on the other side, the difference, which gives you information, which shows you about the situation on the tank. And that makes your work as a ICP consultant, the training.
Yeah.
It makes it so simple, because you can see then way more information out of the test. If a standard reefers can see at the moment, because you have some around 100 different numbers, but you see, oh, we have a high organic load. And that means automatically, oh, we have too much feeding, we need to take care of the skimmer, we need to clean the sand. And so you can give a superb help fast for the customers to solve the problem. So that's why you get this certification, because you have the knowledge, experience, and then you get the numbers of it, and you can help these people then very fast. And what is cheaper than to have to solve a problem within of a few days, instead of losing cohorts, which cost you thousands of dollars and emotion. And so it's why we're creating that system that people can coming to you, can have the full access to the lab numbers, because you have more access to more data, and they can book your time, they can book your experience to solve a problem which will cost them thousands of dollars in the next weeks, and you can solve that for a few bucks. So, and that's why we're creating that system.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. And the other thing I like about yours is how you guys build the tank forecast just for the common home user, so they can really see where if they're on the track to run into certain problems and how to correct it before they become problems. Things like dinos, cyano, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Some of those tank forecast things, I think that was really interesting. And how you guys did it just by, I'm assuming, just taking thousands and thousands of tests and feeding it to both AI and then seeing trends and kind of making it a reliable data point to really look at on that.
It's a mixture. It's a mixture from experience. It's a mixture from the data. Actually, we are on nearby 300,000 tests who is using by the AI. And luckily, we have a lot of customers who are reporting back. So if you can go into the lab account, you can give your amount of light on it. You can push it in, and the AI using every day all the things. And due to the training what I did with Shed Aquarium and in the terms in China and whatever, I have also access to very old tanks. So I don't run, normally we have people running out in the reefs and taking some sample, but this is absolutely not interesting, because it has nothing to do with that what we're doing in our reef tanks. What I'm doing is we have access to all these public aquariums in a large one, and we do the training there, and we do aquaculture and breeding, and there I have access to very old aquariums. So I had possibilities to have water samples from tanks which are 30 years old, 50 years old, and so we do every week of them the testing, and so I see the trends, how long we need, and I can use that numbers to solve that easy issues. And it's I think the only problem at the moment is that it's still not understand, or we do not publish it enough, I don't know, that the major issues what we have is find in the chemistry, because the chemistry have an effect on the organic, the chemistry has an effect on the microbiome,
For
and
sure.
everything related between what we have in biology, so microbiomes and the biology on the surface, the biology on the corals, and what we add and on which way we add. So this is the key of everything. And in 2000, we bring the first product out, which calls organic, where we bound trace elements into organic components, into organic molecules, to have a better way to give it to the cohorts, to have better results on it. That was in year 2000. So years and decades before other people coming out with ICP, or we develop products or something like that. So, and everything is based on the core farming. So because we try to breed cohorts, it doesn't work. The books didn't solve this problem, so you play around. And after killing thousands of cohorts, so the way to learn not to do, you find ways out, oh, on this way it works. And that's the result then, which coming after 40 years reef keeping, coming then to the home pages for the reefers.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any better laboratory than a coral farm to do that kind of stuff. I am curious what the next few years are going to really bring. I'm really, really glad that we really started closely looking a lot closer at the microbiology of what's going on in our systems, particularly what's going on inside the corals, like endolithically. What kind of constituents we have in these corals and their relationships with the coral's health. Is something that I think that we're just beginning to grab and um, flip that rock over to really see what's going on underneath there and how important that is. It is all so interesting, obviously, with the chemistry. The one thing that I think is really controversial right now that I've been debating with some of my coworkers here is, the possible benefit of adding rubidium to these systems, considering it's actually found in a fairly higher concentration in natural seawater than I first realized, being around 120 micrograms per liter, and that it is incorporated into the skeletons of these corals. And I, I know some have said that's not an automatic means that it's a biologically important element, but if it's being incorporated into their skeletons, it's obviously being worked into the process of calcification. But I still think we've got a lot more ways to go to where we can really understand the metabolic importance of some of those lesser known trace elements too.
Mm.
But I understand you guys just started offering the test for the rubidium, particularly for the people who are have these $1,000 bounce mushrooms and things like that, which is why it's kind of piqued our interest, because we obviously have a large collection of some.
But did you see for you, only for you and your experience in your farm, did you see an effect by dosing the rubidium on your cohorts that you will say, hey, I would say yes, it's okay?
We haven't actually tried it yet. We are considering doing it in some of our systems that have some of our more pricey mushrooms and coralomorphs in them. So it's something I've been kind of questioning and researching other people's, experience with it, their observations, before I pull the trigger and decide to start, obviously really conservatively start dosing into some of these systems. And
I'm same.
Trying to make those observations.
Yeah, I'm same like you in this case, but the rubidium stuff is actually, I'm normally really one guy who go deeper into, and I think open-minded about every chemical we tried out and tested out. But with the rubidium, it's a very strange thing. I'm at the moment by 50-50. So it's every time when I think Oh, I think now I see something. So, which brings you to the right direction. The next day, somebody comes, showed me a tank, which is so great, and I have 20 rubidium in. So there's no.
Right.
So, and I always, when I think I have a proof for me, not a scientifically proof, but for me, I have a proof, and I say, okay, it makes sense. Somebody comes around and destroy it, and
Right.
that's really strange with the rubidium thing. That I looked at it now since several years, and I'm at the moment on the point that it's something which we don't need. It's not necessarily for the standard reef keeper. It's not bad if you play around in natural amounts. So that should be not worse, something else. It is absolutely unclear what is the effect on biology, so on the microbiome
Yeah.
and on the things around, on the enzymes. But I just write the knowledge base new. A few years ago, I write a knowledge base about all the elements, and I write it new because we have new information, actually. And we go very deep into the research, also with some scientific and sexual reproduction. So, what is your effect? And I have in rubidium, I have this 50-50. I can tell you the half say yes, I see something. The other half is it's bullshit. So I don't know. In this case, it's really hard for me to say something. It is possible to test, and like you see, we have EMS and it's open, but we don't sell a test. So for MS and for talk testing, or we call it NPOC, it is available by upgrade. So everybody who has an ICP total test or Reef ICP test on Fauna, he can go, he activate the sample in the lab, and then he can choose an upgrade. And then automatically this sample will be tested by MS and by TOC. So there's no need to buy a separate test. There's no need to ship a separate test, something else. They can do that with the standard Reef total test. And we take the amount of water and stuff what we need and out and prepare the sample so that you get a proper value. It's a bit.
Well, I'm curious to. Yeah, we're gonna probably try start doing the rubidium on a few different smaller systems that aren't as high risk or anything like that. Because as you know, I'm pretty risk adverse with everything I do here. So yeah, it'll be something that it's going to be interesting. We're going to try to get our photographers to try to take pictures so we can notice coloration differences in some of the coralomorphs. So we're gonna have them, kind of log their camera settings, what the lights are set at a certain time of day, and take pictures, 6 months apart before rubidium dosing and then after rubidium dosing to really see if there is a measured difference, especially with coloration, because that's really the best way we're going to be able to observe differences. I can't ask a coral, "Hey, how you feeling today?" So they kind of tell us through their growth rates and colors and all that. So it's going to be something I'm interested to see for sure.
Yeah, it should be done. It should be definitely done. But on the other side, I think we have the point always to make the things too complicated and to go too much into the deep. That's also something what I see. So you go into the forums and in the groups, and then it's talking about MS this and there and the better tests, another better test, but it goes a little bit lost that a major key of keeping course is empathy for the animals and time to observe, to do observation. And it's not so necessary if you have plus minus 1% of calcium or if you dose. So what I see at the moment is that the element stuff is too much dosing of single elements without understanding the whole picture and without using systems who contains the right trace elements from beginning on in an amount and in a relation how they are used, and then use the single elements only as on top dosing for the last individualization of the specific reef tank. I see so often that people say, yes, how many of the manganese I should dose, how many of the iron I should dose. I think none of it. Yeah, but it's zero. It's like, yeah, sure, it's zero because we need it in so low amount. You feed brine shrimp, you have more than enough iron in. So that's not the key why your tank is crashing or why your Goniopora don't work.
Yeah.
It is because somebody said Goniopora likes manganese. In this case, nobody's asking for the
Yeah.
study according
Right.
if a private reefer told this. If I said this, okay, you write it down, but it's not true. I don't find any study on it. So that's interesting thing. So now that people buying manganese and iron dose them, but do not understand that it cannot be stable in the water. So 2 days later, it's still on zero. It has to be go over the food and not and over the primary care like we're doing on the Balling Light, so that you prepare it together with trace elements. If you use systems which have contained like hot water, which contains no trace elements, in the
Right.
end, yes, it's cheaper. And you buy a salt which contains no trace elements. Yes, it's cheaper. But at the end, look at your bucket list on elements you buy and have to mix every day. This is crazy. And this is not necessary at all. It's specific elements combining with the food and to see the whole picture. This keeps your corals healthy, but not the dosing of a single element and not running on every number. Definitely not.
I mean, I think it goes back to kind of what you described that you guys developed in the 2000s of using the food or an organic as a transport
Yeah.
to directly deliver whatever you're trying to deliver into the coral biologically or make it available for them. I think a lot of people can, they'll listen to discussions like these, the average home reefer that may be within their first year or two of experience, and they'll hear us talk about manganese and iron and Gani health, and they see that their Gani's that's been struggling, they'll go out and buy manganese and start dosing it. And despite both those elements, not being very soluble in seawater, um, a lot of them can get themselves in trouble by overdoing it. Or I think, like you just said, they just don't understand the whole picture that, that them dosing manganese isn't going to do anything for that Gani if their potassium levels at 300 or if their calcium levels at, whatever,
Yeah,
if anything's out
or
of
even
balance like that.
salinity. The
Right.
salinity,
Exactly. They
it's
couldn't, and with all
everyday
the,
topic.
with some of the handheld testers that they have now, like the Hannas, that people don't realize how important it is to calibrate those measuring devices. Because I mean, salt's the first. I mean, that's the first stop. Where was your problem?
Yeah,
And when I'm talking about the concentration of these chemicals in seawater, is sodium chloride. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of people do get kind of, especially the newer reefers, is they start hearing people talk about all these traces and how important traces can be and all that. But you put it really well that, these individual traces or doing a trace element program should really be only for the reefers that are really looking for that last 10%. It's not for those reefers that are just just starting to remove the training wheels on how to run a reef aquarium. And I see
that's
a lot of that, on the groups that,
that's for 95% unnecessary. So you see on our test
yeah,
that we write down these dynamic elements. So these are the elements which I say look for them, and then you are safe. All the others coming automatically into the tank usually, and I see super rare that we see an iron limitation. Super rare that we see a manganese limitation. We always see over
yeah,
fertilizing. We see way too much. If you go deeper, if you look on the rocks, nobody's understanding properly that the most effect on our reef tanks is the surface and the biofilm, the EPS, what we have. They take everything in, they building the depots, and when they come then later at 1 year, 1.5 years, and have corals getting boring algae, don't grow any longer, then they coming in and said, yeah, what's going wrong? Something is wrong. And then it's the skimmer is the reason, or the light is the reason, or a specific element is the reason. But it is in really 95% of all the cases, it's the tank is over fertilized like a plant. And unluckily for my side is it you can do that quite long. You can do that for 1.5, 2 years, and then it's the problems are coming. But then everybody looks on the last used product. The mistake starts at the beginning, never at the end. So that's when I go to my scale and I'm too heavy, it was surely not the last steak who makes this issue. So and that's
right.
exactly the same in a reef tank. Yeah, but it's It's different to bring that out and to say keep the tank as corals want, a super clean water and good food, and not a dirt water with no food. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's everybody's struggle sometimes, but
The most,
uh,
yes. There are very little people who have it over years in their hands. And you know
so
yourself, yeah, you know
do you notice the
yourself that
difference?
every tank is different. Yeah.
Right. I was curious though on that point. Have you seen a difference between which country who's got the best water, Claude? Tell me, which countries do you see the best water coming from with the lowest DOC, the best phosphate to nitrate ratio? That's something I'm curious about. Is
Uh,
there one country that sticks out that does it better than everybody else?
the
And don't
problem is
say
whatever.
Germany.
I think the problem is now whatever I said that somebody will be pissed. um, Let me say, I know you would not like to hear it, but let me say one thing. In countries where cooking plays a really big role, they usually are better in the water chemistry as in countries who people don't care about cooking. So this is really something which I can see. And what I can see is that the weight of the people running the tank, you can have an idea about the nutrient levels in the most of the tanks if you look at the size and the body weight of the owner. That's also very often the key. It's not 100%. Like I said, whatever I say, somebody will be pissed now. Um, but it's over the years I can really say, um, yeah, you like food and you want that your fishes are healthy and that they have a good feeding. And people say yes, this is all okay, but then you need to install a bigger skimmer and do more water change
Right,
in this
right.
case. So you have to do. I'm absolutely not here to blame somebody taking care of his tank. So if you have a lot of fish, it's necessary you feed them proper. Definitely, I think this is absolutely you're responsible for that. But
Sure, they're animals.
that means automatically you want to keep that amount of fish. That means you have to sort out the export of the nutrients, and then everything is okay.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I cannot say that at the end, I cannot say better or not. What I see is following. What I see is that there's a very small group of people which is active in forums and which is since 40 years. And many of them seems to feel better because they have knowledge or that they know it better because they have some luck or now in experience. What the mass of people don't see, how often they destroy a tank and how often they have problems. What they see is a nice Instagram video with filters and blue light, and then they doing that. This is working only using that salt or that type of ICP test. What they don't see is how many of these people asking others, "Oh, I have this issue today. This course drives me crazy." And I think the biggest problem what we have is that it looks like beginners are stupid and beginners want to understand. And what they don't understand is that it is a super complex and a super difficult animal to keep, and it takes time to find the right balance and to find the right steps for the own aquarium. And it is not that there is no one, and believe me that one, there is no one in the world who start a reef tank having the nicest tank in the world who can keep that over 10, 20, 30 years stable and not have issues and not have losses on the way to this point. Nobody has. Some deal it with money, so they buy a lot of new corals and they push them every day in. As a professional, you see immediately if a coral is growth or not.
Right.
And some others, they have not the money to do that, so they try to fix the corals. But what I like and what earns my absolutely deepest respect is if some beginners, young kids, starting with a very little aquarium, and they even have a value on their small soft corals and let them grow, and they're happy because the red Monty cap is growing. And I hate, meanwhile, people who make fun about it, that these people are proud and happy that their red caps are growing and that they come into the reefers community, then they start to have success with that. And I say to all these arrogant guys, you forget that we see the ICPs. You forget that we know what all the problems you have over the time, and you forget completely that
That's
you
funny.
start with one mistake by the next. So don't be so arrogant and help beginners coming in, help beginners to explain what is an ICP test, and doing not that for everybody is easy to do to drive a nice reef tank over many years. It's a fuck of work. It costs a lot of money. It's a lot of work. It needs a lot of discipline and time. And I think it's a bad direction to be too arrogant and or even to say I run a core farm, I know how it goes. In fact, we know how it goes not, and how fast things happens and how fast cores can die even when we do all what we know. This is exactly what we learned over the last decades, and not that
Yeah.
it's an easy thing, in my opinion. So that's my personal view.
Elitism in hobbies is never a good thing, and it's terrible to see gatekeeping, especially on beginners. And I do think, I spend some time sitting back and on some of the groups and forums and just observing. And I'm going to kind of crack a joke here. I think there needs to be a lot more tolerance for, hey, is this Aptasia kind of post? Because
Yeah,
I noticed there's some people who've been in the hobby for a long time, and they get frustrated with that. It's like, are you kidding me? Keep scrolling. Like, if you don't want to answer them, like, just keep scrolling. These people are learning, and the fact that anybody who's taking the time to ask questions, to do research for an animal that they have in their care, to me, it gives me respect for them, because I see that all too often of people who have the money and have all that can do anything, and they're the people who are throwing tangs in a 20-gallon tank and things like that. They don't have respect for the animal, and I think that needs to be. I don't think everybody sees coral that way either. That they don't respect as such as they're animals. They're living animals. They may not have eyes. They can't speak, and you can't have a conversation with them. They don't wag their tail, but they're still animals. And so that's why anybody who goes ahead and decides to take the responsibility to keep a reef aquarium, they really need to do their research, and you need to view these animals as such. They need to be viewed as animals.
yeah. And we have a long way to go to understand all the things. It
Absolutely.
becomes more and more complicated. But on that side, I would really say, go to this, why we as Fauna Marin creating this group of people doing the training regularly, that we are here as store owners to help the people coming into this hobby, to help them to have success. And don't be afraid about a lot of numbers in the ICP. It's a few numbers, it's 10 numbers at the beginning, which is important, and also the software and the way what we said, what is the dose becoming better and better. Use that as a tool, but I'm sorry, but use that also. Go to the experienced people. You can find them on the website. I visit all these consulting guys. I see on my own what they can do, which experience they have. Go to them, ask them, and they will help you. And because I think today is more the problem, if you go to internet, you have way too much information that you can do a proper research. So, and every book on the market, and most books are too old or written by people who cannot keep an aquarium alive more than 2 years. So, and that's a big problem in information nowadays. So that's also why we said, hey, go to these people, go to the stores who knows what they're doing and which have the proof like yours. And then it is guaranteed that yeah, maybe it's a little bit more expensive, the one or the other product, as you can buy it from a basement store, absolutely. But over a year, 1.5, you save a lot of money because you don't lose animals, and you only buy the right products, and that makes it so affordable if you go to proper and professional companies like yours.
Definitely. I think it's definitely money well spent for sure. Well, Claude, I've got a lot I got to get done before the end of the day. So, and I know that
Yeah,
you're tired from your holiday in Netherlands. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go. It was a great conversation as always.
the next Thursday.
I I'll get with you on. I'll message you and see if that works. I think we might have some new corals coming in on Thursday, but I'm not sure what time the air cargo flight's going to be.
We will find next week a nice day. So, and
yeah,
for all
we can figure
people,
it out.
yeah, and for all people who follow that now and see the video afterwards, if you have any questions, write it down. If you have any comments, please write it down. We want to do that live stream regularly, and so we will go on so on the deeper answer if you have interest on that. So we'll be happy to see that. And many thanks. Like it always, it was a pleasure for me.
Always. Thanks, Claude.
Thanks. Bye bye. Have a good day.